Okay, so welcome back, and this segment is going to be for the off-road trucks, and this is a class that you're going to see all these tiers used. This is my personal tier ranking. This is not reflective of any favorite trucks that I have. It's not a top 10 favorite. I'm just going to try to rank these as best as I see fit. I have a lot of experience with doing testing, truck reviews, etc., like I explained in my last video in the highway and heavy duty trucks. So yeah, I'm going to try to be as objective as possible. You are absolutely free to disagree with me here because I am human. I'm going to have a little bit of bias here with some of these, but I'm going to try to keep these as true as I see fit. So these tier rankings also are based upon my personal ratings that I have, and they are in the description of every video that I post on every review. So if you want to check those out, and if you want to check this little tier maker out, just go to tiermaker.com. And you can plug in all these trucks as well. You might have to go get yourself some images to do that, but go try it out. Let me know what you think. Anyways, let's get started here. Okay, so I'm going to cover these 4x4 trucks in here right now. The Actaeon, the Tuz Warthog, the Zikz, and also the Tatra. So the thing is, I don't think that any of these trucks are super impactful the way they've impacted my game. I haven't used them for much, but I can say that if there is a truck that's going to be a 4x4 that I think can impact the way I play and my style of play to benefit me the best, it's going to be the Zikz. It can have the most add-ons out of all these trucks here, the 4x4 setups, and yeah, so I'm going to put the Zikz here, which I think is a strong C. And I think behind that, I'm going to go to the Actaeon, just for the simple fact that the Actaeon is probably the most crossover vehicle as like a crossover scout slash off-road truck. And I feel like all these smaller 4x4s are really just kind of crossover trucks, except for the Zikz. And the Zikz is the only one that doesn't get the roof rack, I believe. And yeah, so, and then we're going to, I think right behind that, I'm going to put the Warthog. And then after that, the Tuz 805. And all these vehicles can have these upgraded tires, which I'm going to show you right now. And as a little disclaimer, you might hear me saying a lot. I usually don't just do these things on a one-take basis. So if you hear me say or cough or clear my throat, just know that this is all being taken in one go. So anyways, here's the Zikz. As I said before, it doesn't have a roof rack. It can't get it. But out of all the upgrades and all these trucks that you have sitting here, this one can be the most customizable for your mission profile or whatever you're trying to do in the game. I feel like it can benefit drivers better for multiple scenarios, even if you wanted to scout with it. Even as a support vehicle, it can use these larger add-ons. I probably wouldn't use them just because it does seem kind of unstable when you get, you know, a full tank of gas and these large van bodies as well. So, but it can do a lot of things, which that's why I feel this one can get the nod over the others. Also, it recently was given these 47-inch Tayga tires. They're not the actual TMSH. They are the AMHS or TMHS. These are the AMHS 47-inch tires. They're not the 50 inches, the 51-inch tires that both Taygas have, but 47 inches, big balloon tires. It doesn't sink in the ground. So they just recently gave this truck these tires, and it has helped its ability a lot. Okay, so let's go down here and let's talk about the T805. The T805 has the good suspension, the Tatra backbone suspension as well, with the positive camber. And as you can see, it's actually sitting pretty flush right now. The camber is almost looking a little bit negative with the frame add-ons. So when you change those out, you'll see the camber is back. So I think it might be a little bit front heavy, maybe not, we'll see. I have yet to review this thing and actually go through the weight distributions, but you can see as soon as I put that small fuel carrier on there, it kind of bumps it down a little bit. So the suspension is going to be good. This is a nice little truck as like a support vehicle to support scouts. Some downsides is it doesn't have a huge fuel tank. It has a nice roof rack on it, but also It is kind of squirrely to drive down the road. Kicking off all-wheel drive will help, I believe, because it just doesn't have the power to the front wheels that's pulling it every time that you put a turn input in. It's not going to just pull it really quickly into the turn, so keep that in mind. You can do some things with this truck. Overall, I do like it. It's just it doesn't really suit me with my playstyle. Also, something I want to say about this: the single snorkel in the front or in the top is better than the double snorkels, because if one snorkel drowns, if you're listing to one side, then yeah, you're gonna drown. You're gonna drown out just from one snorkel going under. And I like how this one is in the center of the cab, so that's pretty cool. Okay, let's move on here. Let's talk about the Actaeon. I think out of all these, the Actaeon is probably the most scout-ish truck that of all these. I would probably choose the Zikz, as I would say, just for a truck. And then if I was using another scout, and I didn't really want to use a scout vehicle, I would probably choose the Actaeon, just because it has the autonomous winch. It's the only truck outside the scout class that has this winch. So this thing is a lifesaver. So if you used a Scout autonomous winch before, you already know. One thing that's really cool about it, it gets the active suspension. However, with the active suspension, you cannot have the big 47-inch balloon tires. You have to downgrade those to the 43s. I actually use the active suspension because I'd rather gain balance bonuses being a little bit closer to the ground, especially with these attachments on it. So really good power. Doesn't have a lot of fuel in it, but it has a roof rack, which I do think is really beneficial. It doesn't have a low saddle. I wish it had the crane low saddle setup, but it does not. The Warthog does have it, which we will talk about in a little bit. But yeah, it can do a couple more things than the Tatra, and I think it can do a little bit more than the Warthog as well. And then that leads us to the Warthog. Warthog also has actually has a pretty big engine. It has the Azov engine, so I think it's like 210,000 torque rating, so that's pretty darn large engine in it. I have not reviewed this vehicle yet, but I do know about it. And also same thing here, they have the race suspension. You can get the largest tires, but I do tend to go toward the active just for stability purposes. I'd rather have stability over anything. I can always raise my suspension with the active toggle on and off. It gets the standard medium winches, supplies, gets the small bed. Something I noticed here is the actual fuel tank is kind of cut short, and I think the other one is 238, which is the size of a Scout fuel trailer, and this one right here is 159. As you can see, the suspension is compressing from that weight. So, but it can have a low saddle, which is kind of cool. I wonder if it would have collision in the front from turning. That's something I will explore later when I actually review this. But yeah. And anyways, those are the smaller off-road vehicles. So we're going to move on here, and we're talking about both of these ANK Civilian, ANK Mk38. And I'm going to say right now, the ANK Civilian is going to be a pretty good B, and the ANK Mk38 is going to go right behind it in the B category. And we're going to go in here and check these out. So I have reviewed the ANK Mk38 before its rebalance. I haven't got into looking at its whole rebalance that it had, but I believe its balance has been altered in a better way so it doesn't flip as much. What am I doing here? Sorry. Okay, where's it at? Here's the Mk38. Here's the Civilian. Okay, so the Civilian can get the active suspension as well. This is something that I've talked about that I would use over the raised. I would always keep it compressed. It'll allow you to have the 51-inch tires, the balloons, which are very helpful. This thing has a huge engine in it. It's very strong for how much it weighs. Standard medium winch, and this is what I've wanted on the ANK Mk38 for a long time, is give us some add-ons. But as you can see, it compresses the suspension in the back very greatly. I don't think it affects it too much. The tires are very buoyant on top of mud, and I have a video coming out soon that goes over tires and how they're affected by grip and weights in mud, etc. So look for that, but I'm not going to dive into that really too much right now. But this can have the high-low saddle, which is why this, in my opinion, is greater than the next truck, which is the regular Mark 38. And something I need to express with the Mark 38, whenever you roll up on this thing, it, as a stock truck, it's very, very, very good. It comes with these tires, these ANKOs, which are off-road tires. You know, as soon as you roll up to it, these are pretty darn good stock tires to have on a truck. And we all know about starting out with highway tires, so to get this with these ANKO tires that also the other truck gets as well is very, very beneficial. And then also gets these massive 51-inch tires and the active suspension as well. It does guzzle some fuel, it has a small fuel tank, so that's something that you kind of have to be ready for. And then also it has no add-ons as well, so even though all those downsides, I did feel it was a very, very good truck that did impact my game as soon as I rolled up on it. So that's why I felt it was stayed in the B category pretty strongly. Okay, next we are going to talk about, let's pull out one of these. Actually, let's talk about the Step 310 Echo. The Step 310 Echo, for me, I don't feel that it should go into the B category, but it was super, super close. And I feel that this is probably the strongest C on this whole game, or this whole review right here for the off-road class. And in my review, I talked a bit about this truck. I think it's very good. It has good balance to it. And let's get in here and look at it. The Step 310 Echo, if I can even find it. I like the Step 310 because it is very balanced. Has a very good engine. I like this Voron engine. It's pretty good with fuel consumption. The capacity of its fuel tank is not too good, but I think it gets decent enough fuel economy that you can make it work pretty well. Huge downfall, 39 inches until it gets the rear suspension, and then you can get up to, you know, the 43 inches. But however, for a Russian truck, it does not have the mud tire option, so you're gonna get the standard UOD American, and this kind of puzzled me for a little bit. But I feel if this thing had 47-inch tires or even a mud tire option, I think you would see this slide up into the A category pretty easily. Even if you gave it an OHD, it probably would be an A for me. But yeah, just because it was down with those tires and stuff like that, I just felt that, you know, it should stay in the C category for being that low to the ground. It is a smaller truck, so, but it is a very strong C, and I almost moved it to the B category, but I'm trying to be fair here. And as we move on, you'll see why it did not go to that category as well. Okay, so actually, hold up. The Step, that's right, the Step is actually a B. I'm going to switch that because, and actually this is the reason why I'm switching that. The Step is a much better pick than the Royal BM17, and that's why I'm actually moving this down here. The Royal BM17 compared to the Step, even though the Royal BM17 gets 51-inch tires, it does not have differential locking like the Step does. I think it has better fuel consumption than the Royal, and that's why I feel that, sorry about that little mix up there. I forgot I switched those around. I do like the Royal BM17. It has a very strong engine. I've talked about this a little bit later in multiple videos about this engine as well. It's a super fast truck. It's one of the faster trucks in the game. I run with a stock suspension just because I don't want to flip over with the 51-inch tires. The only downsides are it doesn't get you know, a mud tire option as well, but it does have a 51-inch tire, which is very, very nice to have, especially for clearance purposes, because this thing has a big old front end. And in my video, you can see the collisions that are happening with this truck whenever I'm off-roading with it. And yeah, that's kind of a huge deal for me. but I did use the BM17 a lot on my hard mode playthrough. This was a workhorse vehicle for a lot of my Alaska and Tamir projects there. So it's a good truck. It's just hamstrung by not having the differential locking. So that's why I swapped the Step and the BM17, because I feel the Step has a better use case scenario over the BM17. Okay, so next we are going to bust out the Azov 5319, and this is kind of a no-brainer. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but the Azov goes right here in the S category. It's hands down one of the best off-roaders in the game. I've done this review very early in my my career on reviewing trucks. That's kind of odd to say, but this truck is quite amazing. I think it has the best performance of the Azovs. I guess you could, there's arguments that the 73210 has better performance. However, I think for the off-road Azovs, for the 8x8s, it crushes the 64131 in performance-wise. It's an 8x8 truck, gets 50-inch tires, mud tires, has a very, very strong engine. This is the same engine that's in the 64131. It's a very, very strong engine. The difference between this and the 64131 is this has a different set of gearboxes. This has a standard fine-tuned high range and off-road. The 64131, I believe it gets better fuel consumption because it has the advanced special gearbox. So another thing, it doesn't have a huge fuel tank. No stock. It has just a stock suspension. It sits pretty. It's not bad. I wouldn't say its ground clearance is too good, but it's better than the 64131. And overall, this thing is just a monster. It really can support, you know, a ton of add-ons. Very, very good truck to use. I nicknamed it the Wrecking Ball because it's just a wild drive. If anybody has driven this thing, it's insane. And also, it's an armored vehicle, so you hardly ever take engine damage whenever you collide into stuff. So, amazing truck. This is definitely one of the better trucks in the game. So, definitely one of the best 8x8s in my opinion. All right, let's go down here. Let's pull up the Freightliner 114SD. I mean, not the 114SD. We'll do the Freightliner M916A1. The M916A1, I believe, goes right in here behind the BM17, just because the BM17 can do more things. They share the same engine as well. A lot of American trucks share that same engine, but overall, you're gonna see the BM17 just can use more things. This has a smaller fuel tank, special off-road gearbox, which is nice to have because you get those full low gears at whenever you unlock this thing. However, I believe it's level 17 or level 20. I think this one is 17 it unlocks, and by that time, the reason this is also sticking to the C category is by the time you're level 20, you pretty much already have a good fleet of trucks to where justifying buying this vehicle when it only really has either these 3 add-ons doesn't really give you much use out of it. It's a good truck. It weighs a good bit. For tippy wise, I haven't dug in too much with the balance aspect of the truck, but overall I've used it a few good times, and it's been pretty good. But overall, I just couldn't justify putting this over top of the BM17 just for the use case. Okay, let's talk about its brother here, the 114SD. And here's a little bit of a surprising thing. I think the 114SD, it unlocks at level 20. You don't get the upgrades for the, I think the differential locking and all-wheel drive until, I think Alaska in White Valley. I think so. I would have to double check that. But I think it's a B because, and this is kind of where my bias comes in. I've used this vehicle as like a heavy duty scout one time, and I was absolutely super surprised at its capabilities. And also I've used it to haul some things, and even though it doesn't have the strongest of engines, as you can see it shares the same engine as the Kodiak, it did fairly well for what it is. And also I've used it a good bit on later maps like Amur, and also on main, and it's done really well. I've done some logging, as you can see, with this cradle on the back, and it handled the rough terrain pretty well without flipping over, so I was very, very, very impressed with that. It sits pretty high, has a pretty good suspension properties, can use basically every add-on in the game. It's pretty fuel efficient. It actually has a pretty large tank considering it's a American truck, and we don't really see the fuel capacity for a lot of American trucks this high at 300 liters or 80 gallons. 47-inch tires. It's kind of like the White Western Star, but just a little bit different. Not as robust. This is also a smaller truck, kind of like the 310 Echo, but I do feel this does have a good place in the game, and it can be used to great effect. And the place that I did use it for scouting was actually here in Amandra. I was actually going up. I didn't have a scout available to go up here and grab this. I think this is the all-wheel drive for the twin steer, and I took this thing up here in the mountains and just crawled right up these rocks with no issues whatsoever. Crawled down, and I just couldn't. I was like beside myself. So yeah, and I'm not really that great of a driver either. So to see that happen, I definitely opened my eyes to this truck a little bit more. Okay, let's talk about these Vorons here. I'm going to talk about the Voron Grad first, and the Voron Grad goes right into the S category for me. I think the Voron Grad has been an S truck since launch, and I think it's defended its title of being, or its place of being an S truck in Phase 4, just because of that new engine that it got, which gave it a massive power increase. It was an exclusive upgrade to this vehicle. It buffed its power up quite significantly compared to the old one, and it gave it some better fuel efficiency as well, which for me is massive. Those are like my two biggest things that I love, is fuel efficiency, power, and also balance. Excuse me. Also, 50-inch tires, muds, has great tire options. Can get the doubles, can get the OHDs, which I really love the OHDs for these trucks, and also for the chains. You know, you have OHD chains and the MHS chain, so, and also it can use a ton of add-ons except for the, I believe, the small logs and medium logs setup, so you can't use those. So that is a little bit of a downside to the Voron Grad, but this is pretty much my favorite Voron of all of them. I think this is a big contender to the Taygas just because of the sheer power output that it has. Yeah, very good balanced truck, sits pretty wide as well. Okay, let's talk about its brothers here. Okay, so the Voron AE-4380, I just reviewed this truck a few weeks ago. This also goes up into the S, and this is, I've talked about this. The Voron AE is pretty much a combination of the Voron D and the Voron Grad. The Voron Grad has switchable options, and the Voron D has the always-on features, yet the Voron Grad has the high-range gearbox, and then this has the high-range gearbox as well. The Voron AE does, while this has the special off-road. So it kind of like is like a little bit of a mesh between them. Some differences are weight distributions and also engines and such. Okay, so the Voron AE is a really strong truck. It has the same engine as both Taygas. That's really awesome. I thought that was really cool. Has really good tire options as well, as you can see. Basically all those good tire options that you want to use if that's what you would like to switch them up. The race suspension always wasn't there until they added the Rift map, so then you got that race suspension, and it just basically buffed this thing's abilities so much more. Basically can do most things that you need to do. The huge downside, it has the smallest fuel tank capacity of all the Vorons. So for me, you know, I do use it. I just make sure I have support so I can keep it fed with fuel. But anyways, this is an amazing truck. It's great for crawling over rocks, as all the 6x6 elite trucks that I put up here. They're all really good at tackling rocks. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about the Paystar. The Paystar, in my opinion, I believe this is an easy A. This is a truck you can buy at the beginning of the game. It is fantastic. And I believe it stays relevant throughout the game as well. Let me pull this up. There's a few things I do want to talk about. This is one of my favorite vehicles in the game. It doesn't get a crazy powerful engine. The torque values is probably middle of the road when it comes to the off-road class trucks. It might be a little bit farther down on the list. I don't think the torque is that high. It does get the high range gearbox off-road. I usually just stick to the off-road. You can get a race suspension for it in Alaska. However, I don't think there's any need for that because, one, I believe you lose stability whenever you increase your ground clearance with this truck, and also you gain no additional inches on your tires. So I felt that it sits pretty high already. So if I needed it for something else or I needed to get through a deeper area, I would just throw on the suspension. But for stock, it's worked out pretty well for me. It can do really most things. There hasn't really been a map that I haven't tackled in this truck that I didn't feel comfortable with. I feel like it does well in pretty much all the maps. However, its fuel tank isn't that big, and its fuel consumption can guzzle some. Its fuel consumption is questionable, I would say, to be very polite. But anyway, it's a very, very simple A for me. Absolutely. Next, we're going to talk about the KRS Bandit. KRS Bandit right now is definitely going to the A category, and for good reason too. There's a couple things that held it back from being S, and I'll talk about those just a little bit. I'm not going to elaborate too much, trying to make this video as short as possible. Truck has awesome engines that it shares with some of those smaller 4x4 trucks, also with a few others. Gets the high range gearbox, the off-road. It doesn't weigh too much. Doesn't get a race suspension. I'm glad it doesn't because I don't think it really needs it. However, it does get these large, big old AMHS tires. This is huge for an 8x8. I mean, looking at this thing, you just can understand it's going to be able to crush some terrain. Okay. One thing I love about this truck as well, it has this custom crane that kind of folds over the cab and maximizes the space on the vehicle, so it can use a sideboard bed, and a crane as well, as you can see right here. It's very, very nice. This thing has a lot of different add-ons, and also its roof rack is pretty darn big, which I think it needs, because the reason I did not put this thing in the S category is because its fuel capacity is very, very low. 40 gallons, and I believe it's 190 liters. I'd have to cross-check that, but 40 gallons capacity is pretty small, but it has decent fuel consumption. It can tackle for being an 8x8, this thing can tackle rocks really, really well. So I felt that a strong A was where I felt this thing needed to go. Very, very good truck. Okay, let's go back to my screen here. Okay, we're going to bust out. We'll talk about these guys last. I'm going to bring this Tatra Phoenix out. Tatra Phoenix for me, I think it goes into the A. I think it definitely goes into the A. I don't think it goes above the KRS Bandit, just because of simply the KRS Bandit can do more things versatility-wise. But the Phoenix is a great truck. Let's go down to it here. Here we go. Okay, so the Phoenix has the famous Tatra backbone, as you can see, the positive camber, and this truck is super, super stable. It's a super stable truck. It's super strong. It just got this new engine that the Voron Grad has, and if you watch my review on this thing, you can see it's like a wild man. With the high range gearbox, it is insane. I usually don't run around with it just because you know, it steers basically, you know, it has I think its rear wheels also steer as well. So this thing can cut on a dime, and it's just awkward for me to keep it online. So you really have to pay attention to your wheels, especially at fast paces. So that's also why I gave it a little bit of a ding there. Another thing is it has I wouldn't say these are super small tires, but 46 inches are not the biggest tires. It sits pretty low, so whenever you get bogged down into mud, you will ground out from your frame hitting. So that was another thing that was a concerning thing as well. Also, it doesn't have always on differential locking, which I feel if it did, oh my goodness, the performance would be amazing, even more amazing than it already is. And then lastly, it just can't use a ton of options. As you can see, it can use the sideboard bed, but it can't use the sideboard bed in conjunction with that crane. And then there's this empty space that I think you probably could squeeze the crane in, but that could be wishful thinking. But the Tatra Force can do that, and this one can't. So I felt that just from its overall performance, large fuel tank, decent economy, that it was a pretty safe to say it was going to go into the A category. Okay, let's talk about the 64131. The 64131 for me is probably one of the best that's going to go into the A category right now. And for reasons are pretty darn simple. I really did want to throw it in the S category just because it is my favorite truck in the game. But because I'm just a slow-paced type of guy, but I had to be realistic. I had to be had to have some type of scrutiny on this vehicle. It is super slow. It's very powerful. It weighs a ton. It's the heaviest off-road truck that we have here, so therefore it gets the best grip value from that weight. Also has the advanced special, which is why it's pretty darn slow. Unlike its brother, the 5319, doesn't have a stock suspension, has 47-inch tires, sits pretty darn low to the ground, so in those really, really deep spots, you will ground out from your frame dragging. So, you know, in deeper areas, those trucks that have those balloon tires, they just basically sit on top of the surface and can crawl through mud slowly, while this one just kind of sinks to the ground. And also the 5319 has 50-inch tires, and that's why I gave that the nod at the S plus or the S rating over this one. Also, this thing can use a ton of add-ons for how short its frame is. I really don't know how it got to use all these frame add-ons, but I'm not going to complain. Saber, if you're listening, please do not change this. I love that this thing can do most things with how short its frame is. It's not good at climbing over rocks, but overall it has a huge fuel tank. It's very, very, very fuel efficient. I think it's one of the most fuel efficient vehicles in the game. There's some arguments that I think the Tatra T813 is. However, the Tatra T813 under load, I've seen it get up into, you know, the higher 5 gallons per minute, and I've never seen this truck get over 5.0 under the extreme loads. And I can tell you that if there's any truck that I know in this game, it's probably this one. I've spent the most time in it. So yeah, it's a strong A. It's definitely going to be very solid for you, and also a good thing about it is you can purchase it as soon as you have the money. There's no level cap on it as well. Okay, now let's talk about these big boys. I kind of saved these two for last, but we're going to talk about the Voron D. The Voron D is going to go right here behind the Azov, and the only reason I put the Voron D here over these trucks, and I'm going to go in here and kind of like show you. I really can't show you why I did this, but I'm going to talk about it as I'm showcasing the truck. But I love the Voron D. It's a really good truck. It suits my gameplay a lot. Has a super strong engine. Same one that the Taygas have, the other Voron have as well. It boasts a special off-road gearbox, which is basically just a different variant of the off-road gearbox. This comes stock, so you're not hunting down gearboxes. It's a very good vehicle to have in early game. You can just buy it for, I think, a little bit over 80,000. You would have to find the race suspension, which is in Tamir. But anyways, even without it, it's going to be a very, very good truck. Gets 50-inch tires, a ton of tire options. Has more fuel capacity than the Voron D, less fuel capacity than the Voron Grad. So it just suits my gameplay a little bit better, with being a little bit slower paced just from its gearbox, but I do love it. I don't like how it squeaks, kind of throws me off a little bit, but I don't feel that it's as stable as the other trucks. Whenever I looked at the game files and did testing, I do feel it's decent when it comes to stability. I do think it's definitely usable, and I will never say this is a tippy truck, but for how stable its brothers are, I just couldn't throw him up here into the S category. But I do feel he is a strong A, probably an A+. So he's definitely not behind, not far behind. He's still an elite truck. I do love that vehicle. Okay, let's talk about these guys. We'll talk about the new Tayga right here. The new Tayga is definitely going right up in here. For the simple fact that over the 5319, it has a very similar engine, but I think this can take boulders more and just the overall terrain. I think this can tackle it better because of its tires, its frame flex, suspension, etc. over the 8x8s. And that's pretty objective to say that, because this truck here is pretty good with taking rocks, considering it is an 8x8. But I think the only 8x8 that really takes rocks really good is the Bandit. Okay, so where is this guy at? Here he is. This is an awesome truck. On my review, I made a mistake saying that it couldn't use this crane, sideboard bed, and the hitch trailer combo. That is my mistake. Anyways, it has a very strong engine, off-road gearbox, or the high range. It's very similar to the other Tayga. Gets the 50-inch tires, doesn't get 51s like the other OG Tayga, which is kind of odd. Anyways, but it can use a lot of things. It has a roof rack, which just is another spare tire, but I thought that was kind of cool that they gave it that feature. It can do a lot of things. I've reviewed this truck. If you want to see more about it, go check it out. It's basically the same as the other Tayga with a little better add-ons. I think it has better ground clearance, smaller tires, same fuel consumption, same fuel tank, etc. And it also is a little bit more heavy than the other Tayga as well. So small differences, but overall it's a pretty darn good truck, which is why it goes right into the S category, no questions asked. Okay, so we're gonna talk about basically this guy. He's been in the game ever since launch. You go find him, he's free. I still believe this is probably the best in tier. I think they're actually probably equals. I think there's some better things about the 6436, and then there's also some better things about the 6455B, and vice versa. And I think it just goes back and forth. You could probably say 6455B is better, or vice versa, but I think these two sit here on top as well. Anyways, let's go look at this beast. Now listen to this. I am not a fan of the Tayga. I am not like one of those person who is team Tayga. I am team Azov, but I also think I need to give credit where credit is due. This truck since day one has just been a monster. Even with, through the years that it's got, or not the years, it's only been about a year and almost 2 years now. 2 years, maybe more. Since the truck has been released, it's been at the top of the class and has been. So super strong engine, high range gearbox has a ton of gearbox options. Usually the high range gearbox is going to get you that rapid pace as well. Your tires are going to take a lot of damage just because they're balloons. You're moving at faster paces. However, this truck can take a lot of damage. It has very good damage tolerances, as well as its brother does too. Race suspension. It does need the race suspension. You find all those on the last map, which is Zimnogorsk. And yeah, it gets 51-inch tires, has really good tire sets. Its tire sets are better than its brother. Its brother actually doesn't get all the tire sets that it has, and I will show you. See, it gets the OHS off-roads. It doesn't get the OHDs, which are wider, gain more traction. You can gain more traction from adding more weight with the OHDs, which you will come to find in my video coming up on mud and tires as well, so keep an eye out for that. But also you gain stability from a wide track, but usually you're always going to use the TMHS. But so yeah, it doesn't have as good as tire options as the 6436. Now, there's really not much to say. It can't use the sideboard bed, the crane, and the trailer combo, which has been a complaint from the SnowRunner community for quite some time now. But anyways, I don't think that's a big deal for me because this is literally the setup that I love to run. I think it runs amazing. It can pull almost anything. If you played this game, you've played the Tayga, you know that it is basically the best in the off-road class, as well as the 6455B. So that is my list, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. I really tried to be as objective as I could. A lot of these trucks, they've got their spot just because they've impacted my game in a very, very positive way. And some other trucks as well, I just had to be as truthful as I could. And also I didn't want to be too biased as well. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this. Go check out Tier Maker, make your own list, and let me know what you think. Anyways, have a wonderful day. God bless, and we'll see you next time.